Hi, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to Office Hours, where we talk media and production 7 days a week. It's Friday, means it's Q&A day. We've assembled an excellent panel, and we've got some questions already lined up. So, Alexander, let's dive right in.
All right, first question is from Andy Kokendorfer in Vieira, Florida. The vocalist on this Teddy swim session is using opposing vocal mics. Curious, why would anyone mic in this fashion?
And looks like Andy has a link there in the in his question. So if what we're looking at is this setup right here with two mics opposing one another, Chris, why don't you start us off? Can't hear you, Chris.
Yeah, you've got your mic set up in the opposite direction.
You need two microphones.
My
opposing.
mics were set up in another room. So here's what I think. I think the reason they got the mics like this, the clue is they're two different microphones. And they're positioned in such a way, because audio can't be upside down, they're positioned in such a way that they're trying to put them as close together as possible. So it's not stereo imaging. It's not I think this vocalist has a huge vocal range, and I did hit play, and he does, although I can't play it here. So one microphone is probably better for breathy, quiet bits, and one is probably better set up for when he belts out big notes, but they want them as close as possible. And let's also just say it's the music video. He's probably not recording live, and they just wanted it to look cool. That's my guess.
For all the breathy bits, it's Alexander Knight.
For the breathy bits.
Yeah, I agree. It's more than likely it is just for different options in terms of microphones and sounds. However, sometimes when you see mics like this with the capsule, with the two microphones like that in very close proximity, like you do in the video here, which I will cut to quickly, sometimes what people do is they can do a mid-side recording technique, which is basically where one microphone is set up as a figure 8 pattern. Which means it picks up sound equally from either side, from the front and from the rear, and then they'll have a cardioid microphone to do so that when it's decoded properly in the mix, that you can do some really interesting things spatially with the stereo imaging. But it's hard to say exactly because we can't really tell what microphones that are. I mean, the top one, that could be a U67 possibly. I mean, there's so many clones now and so many mics that have the same kind of look. With just looking at the basket of the microphone, it's really difficult to tell. But I agree, it's a music video, and it's probably just they were recording in the studio and they wanted some different flavors of microphone to choose.
We've heard from the Bay, we've heard from British Columbia. Now let's go to Hollywood. Courtney Gooden.
Well, this is all due to the Fletcher-Munson curve, you see, because sounds at different frequencies have different levels perceived by the ear, as outlined by Mr. Fletcher and Mr. Munson. This is why they had that button on your old stereo that said loudness. And because a vocalist that delivers a very broad range of dynamics, won't be recorded equally at those different levels. So this gives you a more sensitive microphone, and perhaps a less sensitive microphone, or one that's richer in the low end when he's down in the bass registers than when it is in the high end. So they can adjust those curves and even blend those microphones to adapt for the Fletcher-Munson curve of the hearing of the average human being.
Now I can add to my Munson compendium. I had Thurman Munson for the, if we need 1970s Yankees baseball trivia. I had Munson from Kingpin and bowling, and now I have Fletcher Munson. So I got a basket of microphones and a basket of Munsons. Next question.
This one is from the QR code, Chuck Hodges in Tuolumne, California. What is the link for kitchen lights you talked about? Thanks.
Okay. I'm stretching a little bit here. I've got context clues. So it looks like this came in on Tuesday night. We had a really, really cool show. We had Ryan Summerfield from Social EU was on. And during it, and by the way, if you haven't checked out Tuesday Focus, it is so fun because there's guests come in from all over the place. We've got different subjects that people within office hours like to talk about. Super cool. When questions come in via the QR code and it's after we already have too many questions to answer for the hour, sometimes there's leftover. So here's what the section of the video was. If you go to Tuesday Focus from this week, Ryan was talking about using green screen. And about 54 minutes in, he's drawing a little diagram about how he builds green screens. And he was talking about some kitchen lights that he bought at Lowe's. And he didn't go into specifics, but that's okay, because what he was basically saying is if you get a nice soft light and you lay it out in such a way that you can light your background without shadows, you can pull a decent key off of that. On the off chance that somebody in chat for that show happened to find a link and put it into the chat, another thing, if you go to officehours.global/join and you join the community, you get into our Discord via the email link that comes. And in that Discord, every single time we have a chat, we have someone who is throwing all of the links that were posted in that chat into a document. So if we were talking about a specific light or talking about a specific video, you can go back and check that out at officehours.global/join. And as an extra special exciting thing, Cindy Drozda, who you may know as the reader for the Tuesday Focus, pictured here with Bill, what she's going to be doing next Tuesday is it's going to be a whole special on makers who stream. And Cindy does amazing things with wood turning. And so she's going to be coming in to talk about that. So check that out. Tuesday Focus. We do that 6 p.m. Pacific. Next question.
This one is coming in from Rajan Chandel in Los Angeles. How do you use Bitfocus Companion?
All right. Back to the PNW. Chris Sabato.
So I might be a little different because of my
we're all a little different. It's okay.
So I work on a university campus, and 99.9% of my productions are on campus. And so the way I have it is I have I'm going to call it a companion server. It's really just a small Dell Optiplex mini computer that runs Companion. And it runs Companion for all of our broadcasts. So I have all of my stream decks for all of our broadcasts, and we can have up to 3 or 4 broadcasts going at the same time. And I have all of my stream decks either plugged directly into that, depending on where they are, or connected via Companion satellite. And from there, it goes out from the Companion server and connects to the various vMix rigs, to the various. I've got a handful of XR12s, some XR18s, and an X32. It can control all those, and so from one unit, I'm controlling. I think last I looked, I think I had 15 devices in my Companion setup, and 10 control surfaces. And so it's the hub, and what that allows me to do is to be super flexible, and so that any one Stream Deck can control any one of my vMix machines, and vice versa. And I can move things around, and I can remote in from my home office into campus to control things, and it just makes organization a whole lot easier. Especially when everything's on campus, everything's in one place. I can move things around, and I've just got this one hub controlling everything. So that's how I use it.
Alexander?
Yeah, there's too many uses. There's almost an infinite number of uses. In my case, like many people here, I've got a Stream Deck XL, only one Stream Deck, which I know is rather pedestrian because a lot of us in the community have, 2 or 3 or 6 or 8 or something like that. They get up there. The entire desk is a Stream Deck. Yeah, I might have to build a custom desk and just have it. I'm just going to have them inset into the desk. That would be cool. But in my case, I use it for things like controlling my ATEM switcher, switching between inputs, that kind of thing. I have buttons programmed to control basic functionality on my digital console, like unmute and mute my microphones. I also have, what else? I also have it set up to control my KVM switcher. So my KVM that switches between the USB inputs between all the different computers that I have here, which is made by TestSmart. It has a network jack on it, so I've got it connected to my network. It accepts TCP commands, And there's a module for it in the Bitfocus community. So I got that set up. It was a bit of a pain to get it set up, but it's really nice to be able to just push a button on the Stream Deck and be able to switch between all the computers instead of using a infrared remote, which is incredibly cumbersome. And I used it for way too long and procrastinated for a long time before getting it set up. But I'm glad I did. And what else do I do? I've got some. With one of the modules that I use, which is called Vicrio Listener, which is incredibly useful. Highly recommend it. It's a small amount of money to pay for the license every year, and they give you access. I think you can have up to 5 computers per license. And what that does is that will do things like accept keystrokes. So, for example, I've got shortcuts on my Mac OS computers set up that will trigger, say, a screensaver. And so I can have one button on my Stream Deck that turns the screensaver on all of my Macs, all at the same time. So there really are a lot of clever, useful productivity tips and things that you can do with Bitfocus Companion. That just barely scratches the surface.
Guy?
Yeah, one of the cool things about going to the NAB show was there was a trailer there, and Doug Ferguson gave us a little tour of this trailer, and I looked down, and there was this Stream Deck rack unit, and I started going through all the pages, and it was crazy to see how much stuff that somebody would have in a typical studio. At Tenacious, the TD has this monster of 6, and you got graphics on the right. He's also got these ways of building these super sources where he can throw anybody into any box at any time. So he could do 2-up, 3-ups, 4-ups. We call them VCs. These are virtual computers. This is the elusive pinning farm. We have since switched over to Zoom ISO version 3, but you can see all these VC1, VC2, VC3s. Those are basically the remote guests, because we do recurring shows that have guests in it. But I've seen people do just some crazy stuff, like Jonas. When I was working on a project with him, it was vMix in the cloud, and the remote TD never saw vMix. It was completely obscured. And this was a big show. It was one where we could fail over even on page. So we would have multiple Stream Decks, but there was another page that just had this fail to be, and you would just push that button and it would drop the Zoom output in one show and pick up the other one in another data center on another coast. So the whole data center in Ohio could get wiped out, and with one button push, within less than a second, you could be fired up, and on the other one, it turns its camera on. So there's just so much that you could do with these. So there's a couple ways that we use Bitfocus Companion.
And I am a little different, I think, than most because, well, and I shouldn't say that. I have no data to back this up. I don't use Bitfocus. I still use the regular Stream Deck application with the Bitfocus Companion plugin so that I can have my normal Stream Deck buttons next to my companion buttons, because sometimes I want to use the built-in functionality. Like, this is my basic remote switcher control for my ATEM. When I'm in a Zoom meeting, I want to be able to mute my microphone, raise my hand. Some meetings I'm in use reactions, some don't, so I have reaction buttons there. And then when I'm on the show, I can switch my QR code. So when I'm in, for example, if I am in, say, my join office hours, I turn on the key, bring in the QR code, and then like I say, you can ask us questions. I hit the ask button. You can go to officehours.global/donate. I hit the donate button. Now you also see that my QR codes are not all the same size, which bothers me, but normally you don't see it on the show. That's one of them. I actually have a little Stream Deckzilla here where I have 3 of them on top of one another. So then I have one in a different location that has a lot of the same buttons, but sometimes my hand is just in a different place. And I can also go in here and edit what graphics I'm in. So if I want to change what's in my key, if I want to change what is the output of my switcher, I have that in a folder. I also have, back on that other one, a folder called Switcher Defaults, because I hate having to go and reprogram everything. So if I want to copy and paste, I have this saved that I can grab it. And then for the third one, I don't know what I have for the third one. That's Ecamm. Oh, I think for the third one, oh, there it is. This one is, I don't know where. Oh, I see. I'm hitting the wrong buttons again. This one, I have a button with some macros. I can jump into the actual Stream Deck app. And then the one that's on top, I think, is just, I have like a little clock and the date. So sometimes you have, literally Stream Decks in different places. And I'm such a simpleton compared to the way that some people use a Stream Deck. But when depending on where my hands are, I need to be able to hit that button. So I have the same button in 2 or 3 different places so that I can always be clicking. Chris.
At some point, I want you to teach me how you put the clock in the Stream Deck buttons. How the hell did you do that?
There's a clock app.
What?
There's a clock app, and then quick demo, just because I have no self-discipline.
Because you're hosting the show, you can do whatever you want.
Take that. So yeah, it's literally just the basic clock plugin, and then I come into here, and when I open the editor, I can say, hey, just give me seconds, just give me minutes, just give me hours, and I programmed 3 different buttons to do that so that I can have it.
That's ridiculous.
At a glance. Yeah, it's extra. I know, but hey, forget about it. But seriously, if you haven't played with Bitfocus Companion and you found Stream Deck limiting in any way, there's an incredible community of people who have put together all sorts of different plugins, all sorts of different tools that you can use to pretty much be the glue to stick all of your stuff together. And I think it's pretty fascinating. Yeah,
I will say that this community, and in the last couple of weeks in After Hours, I have ranted, but in this community has a tendency to say, I need to trim my nail. I'm going to run to the shop and get the grinder. I mean, like we go for the biggest, most overblown, ridiculous tool because to a certain degree, it gives us an excuse to go buy something else. And so I appreciate the fact that you're like, no, I'm going to try and use the Stream Deck software. You don't have to like run out and get Companion all the time. There's often ways to do things with what you already have. You just have to put your head down and, concentrate for a little bit.
And I enjoy an artificial constraint of try to figure it out with the stuff that you have because it makes you more creative. I think some of the most incredible innovations in technology in general, computer software especially, were there because, hey, when they had to design the original Mac OS icons, they had an incredibly small screen, and they had to figure out how do you communicate this message with a limited number of pixels.
64 pixels by 64 pixels?
It might have been 128, but I don't remember. Anyway, I am ranting now. Next question.
Yeah, this one's coming in from Mike Beardmore in Bedford, UK. I'm noticing an increased raft of app updates, likely due to Mythos finding serious bugs. How is this impacting the production industry, which is reluctant to be, quote, cutting edge on updates?
Courtney.
I think it's more affecting the infrastructure suppliers like Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, those that provide backbones, and streaming suppliers, NVIDIA, that manufacture the hardware, because Project Glasswing, which is part of Anthropic's push to deploy Mythos, which is their software that looks for exploitable areas of existing software, especially infrastructure software that could be exploited. So I don't think the individual app developers have got access to Mythos yet. I think maybe if you see app developers updating stuff, it may be because WWDC is coming up in about 40 days or so, 30 days, a little month and a week. And so maybe a lot of app developers are tuning up their apps for any announcements that are going to come forth from the Apple universe in the next month. So we'll see. I think Mythos, if they're finding bugs, they're not, publicizing it. And most of the people with access to Mythos are really the infrastructure people, not necessarily the app writer.
Yeah, they've released it to 50 companies, and it's tough to say, like, is this, when all of the AI news comes out, you have to be like, is this hype because they're trying to say, oh, it's too dangerous to release, that's how good it is, or is there a legitimate security threat here? And so, but for this one, they released it to 50 companies before they go wider. Alexander?
Yeah, so I love the idea that they're calling Mythos, so they've had to hold it back because they call it a very, very dangerous technology. It's really interesting. I've been following it, and from what I've heard, that Mozilla actually used it on their code base for Firefox, and it found something like 250 plus bugs, and apparently they've already patched it. I think we're going to see once this thing is out in the wild and people unleash this technology on their code, I think we're going to see this is going to really be a huge change in the industry, that these types of AIs are going to be really good for finding all the mistakes that us human beings make when we write code, because it's been proven time and time again. I mean, if you are even remotely interested in security, and I don't pretend to be an expert or anything, but I've been listening to the Security Now show with Steve Gibson pretty much since the beginning, and it's clear based on history that we are incapable of writing really, really secure software because people keep making mistakes over and over and over again. So I'm very much looking forward to these types of tools being able to aid us in cleaning up code and finding these bugs. And I know people like Steve Gibson seem to really, really believe that it is possible for code to be perfected. It is possible to have all bugs resolved. And I think I believe that.
And to underline what Alexander said, there in a blog post this week, Mozilla said that they, in releasing their updates to Firefox this week, they patched 271 previously unknown vulnerabilities. And it's interesting, Mozilla is going to be upfront about how many bugs they're patching. The bigger players that have big market caps and stock prices to worry about are going to be a little more reticent. It'll be interesting to see how many bugs do they disclose, or is it just, wow, this security update's got a lot more megabytes than usual. What's going on in there? Tom?
Well, if you're on a Mac, it might be because support is ending for Intel-based apps. I am starting to get a lot of notifications that, this is an Intel-based app. When the new Mac OS comes out in the fall, it will no longer run. And people have been procrastinating for about 5 years now to get that done, and they're starting to catch up with these. So hopefully that's what it is.
And Chris?
Speaking of stock prices, Apple's earnings call was yesterday after close of market, and it's up like $14 a share today. Yay!
Courtney?
My goggles.
Yeah, in relationship to your question about the production industry, I didn't attend it, but the Hollywood SMPTE meeting last night was on protection, encryption protection of streaming assets by the majors. Hopefully they videotaped it, and it will be available somewhere at hollywoodsmpte.org or Hollywood SMPTE's website somewhere, on the SMPTE website somewhere. So look for that, and then you'll see what the basic production industry is doing about protecting their assets as they go online.
And thank you, Courtney, for bringing us back. We went off the rails there a little bit and forgot about how does it relate to the production part? Yes. It's common for us to be, when we have mission critical things where failure is not an option, to be slower on the update curve. And even when there's security updates, you want to be doing testing all of your systems as you update them to make sure that you're not, doing something with good intentions in the name of security, but then you bork your system. So it's definitely something this is how I look at it. Keep the minimum number of machines possible connected to a network. If it is an appliance that's doing a thing in a rack, it doesn't need to be on the internet all the time. Or you can somehow, coordinate off from the internet with the VLANs or something else like that. But just food for thought. Not everything needs to be on the internet. Next question.
This one's coming in from Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. Would this slider work well with a Sony ZVE-10 Mark II or an Insta360 link? And we've got a link to iFootageGear.com.
I read this question, and I know slider is there's nothing special about slider's just a thing, but I just have Fantastic Voyage stuck in my head now. I can't help it. Courtney?
Yeah, or those little hamburgers that they sell. at
White Castle.
That's slippity
Yeah, the White Castle sliders. Now, this is what he's talking about. It's not much of a slider. If you look at it, it only has about 1.5 feet of travel, judging from the size of the phone that's mounted on it. Whether or not it would handle a ZVE-10ii or an Insta360 Link is very similar to the camera that's shown in that demonstration. They're kind of, in this image that they've conjured up for their advertising here, they wouldn't be taking advantage of the slider, because the whole idea of a slider is to emphasize the parallax between something in the foreground and something in the background. And if you look at the picture, the woman that is the subject is stuck right against the wall there, so you're not going to see much change in parallax, especially with only a 2 foot, 1.5 feet travel on this slider. Plus, you're going to have, if you have something like a 360 Link that is tracking your face and a screen underneath it that's going to attract your image, you're going to be looking at the camera as it moves anyway. So that's bizarre as to why you'd use the slider in the first place. So would it work? Is it long enough? No. Maybe they have extensions for it so you could make it go further. Or maybe you could use it where you put somebody right up close and then you have the background about 6 or 7 feet away, so you see the background moving behind the person as they turn their head to watch the camera as it slides about 1.5 feet.
But are there holes in the patties? Chris?
I don't know if you guys have ever noticed, but my camera's on a slider. If you look really careful, you can see me moving back and forth. You see that? Because I have one of these sliders. It's right there. Now, this is a stupid product. It's ridiculous. It solves a problem that doesn't exist. And it's, like Courtney says, it's way too small. Dumb. Waste of money. Anybody disagrees, feel free to email me at chrisfenwick@mac.com. There, I said it.
One of the things I really value about office hours is the fearless feedback. And sometimes you need to hear it. And it's good when you know that you're going to get an unvarnished, unguarded, no pull punches kind of a thing. Copyright chrisfenwick@mac.com. Next question.
He does have a program called The Grill, so that's fine.
CJ Covell.
I also never read emails, so feel free to email me anything you want. I think I have 80,000 unread emails.
CJ Covell in Cincinnati, Ohio asks, has anybody seen the new Photoshop feature that lets you rotate photos in a novel way?
Hey, guy. Not Chris Fenwick, who this question was directed towards, but go. What's up, guy?
Yeah, it's pretty funny to look at this capability, because just yesterday I was in downtown Seattle and I went into the building where I used to do Photoshop 8 hours a day on a Quadra 950 with 128 megabytes of RAM, and that was a $12,000 supercomputer. We had 10 of them, and it was crazy. And now I look at Matt Bach, who I just saw at NAB, and this looks just like him. So he put this post up on LinkedIn where he's using the new version of Photoshop, and he takes this picture of himself and he's spinning himself around. So I did get a chance to look at it briefly here on LinkedIn and see that Matt's spinning himself around, and it's making up all the top and the bottom and the rear in real time. So pretty impressive stuff beyond the 30 years ago when I was playing with Photoshop on a Quadra 950, which you can do on a Mac, a modern Mac.
Chris?
Remember when they added layers to Photoshop? So here, I actually have here. So here's our friend Mr. Spock. And basically what I did is I took the background and then I removed Spock because, why not? And then you make another layer that's all Spock. And then when you have all three of those things like that, you select this guy, and it's up here under Edit, Rotate Object. And somehow it just thinks that, Spock is an object now instead of a sentient, Vulcan from the planet Vulcan. And it does a little math, and then like Guy just showed, you can turn Spock around. It's ridiculous. Whoa. This is the most incredible thing I've seen out of Adobe. And you know what? I still don't want to give them my money. But anyway, it's pretty cool.
And the more obviously, the closer you get to 180-degree rotation, the more guessing it's going to have to do. And the two
it knows what
examples here
Spock looks like. It's
the two examples here were
it
really
watches
good.
all the old episodes, and it goes, "Oh, here's an episode where we can see him from behind." He looks.
If you're not Mr. Spock, and you don't have hundreds of hours of TV to turn yourself around, you are probably going to be better served by doing just like any slider in a computer program. Less is more. I'm going to have us do as little guessing as possible, but the stuff that it's coming out with is pretty impressive. But just beware the uncanny valley. Courtney?
Yeah, Nano Banana lets you do this, but not interact with it in 3. Yeah, with Fenwick's demonstration, it lets you actually create that slider look, and you can actually rock around the Spock. Ooh.
Wasn't that sorry, no. Rock around Spock 29. So, Guy, I've got a question. Did I totally miss something? I missed the key. What's the key? I don't remember a key. I guess I didn't have a quadra.
Yeah.
Was that just because you didn't want somebody
That's so somebody wouldn't break in and steal your 4 megabytes of RAM.
Wow.
Dude, I remember when the RAM showed up, the UPS guy, it was $30,000 in RAM to upgrade our computers, and it all came in one little box. And $30,000 in 1995 was a lot of money.
Yeah, in the valley, you'd go to these undescript warehouses, and you'd go around to the side door, and it was a steel like guard door, and you'd have to get buzzed into a box, a little crazy box that was like 3 feet by 3 feet with a thick bulletproof window, and you'd say, "Yeah, I'd like to buy 2 megabytes of RAM." It's nuts.
Wow. Well, that's incredible, but I'm again not surprised. So. We've already talked a little bit about officehours.global/join if you wanted to get in the Discord and also into the chat and the voting. If you have questions and you're not in Makana, you can go to askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global. And that's open 24/7. So you can get your questions in anytime. Nothing to sign up for, nothing to log into. Just put in your name, put in your question, and we'll get into it on the next Q&A. Next question.
This question coming up is from Matt Halverson in Brookings, South Dakota. We use a TV in our studio to display a Zoom guest on set. The screen is very blue on camera, and I have limited options for tuning the white balance of the TV. I can set it to warm, and that's about it. Is there anything I can do besides getting a new TV?
Tom? Oh, can't hear you, Tom.
Matt, sounds like you're using 3200 Kelvin lighting. It's warm. Your TV screen is not. Warming up your TV screen is a good way to go because you have to change the screen or your lighting. So if you can, bring the color temperature lighting of your guests up a little bit, that would help. Back in the 70s, we used a great big large 85 gel from Kodak over the monitors to make them warm up. Anything you can do in there to warm up that screen is your answer.
Chris Sabato.
So, as Tom said, you got 2 options. You can change the color in the room, or you can change the color on the TV. And if you can do it in the room, that's the easy one, right? Well, I mean, not necessarily easy, but that is the straightforward route. If you can't do that and you want to change the color on the TV, you haven't said what your flow is, but if you're coming SDI out of the switcher and then converting to HDMI, the Blackmagic SDI to HDMI converters support LUTs, and so you could put a custom LUT in that converter and make it look however you want.
Courtney?
Actually, there's 3 ways to set it. You can set the TV itself, and many TVs have a deeper menu rather than just setting the color temperature that actually lets you go in, and there's a service menu a lot of times that let you go in and set the red, green, and blue values. And if you set the blue down to about 20%, it will make it more tungsten. But these days, most operating systems, I think Mac does this, I know Windows does, has a nighttime mode. So look for the night mode. And what that does is it knocks the blue level of anything coming out of your computer, which would be the Zoom guest, down and makes it more warm and gives it more of a tungsten feel to it. So look for the nighttime level on your operating system in the Mac or the PC and see how that affects your white levels of your Zoom guest, because it will make them warm them up a little bit if it does anything like Windows does. We used to have to do this on the set all the time because on TV shows, my job would be balance those 9300 Kelvin LCD screens to match the tungsten lighting on the set, which is set for a white point of, around 4,800, 5,000 at most. And so we would have to actually go in and adjust the levels, the signal levels, their RGB levels of the monitors themselves, or the color of the video as it's going to that screen. So either a LUT, as was mentioned, but just look at the night settings for the operating system for limiting blue light exposure, which most of them have these days. And it'll warm it up quite a bit and make them look a little more realistic.
Guy?
Yeah, on the wall at Tenacious, we have 12 55-inch OLED displays. And what you could do on them is you could jump into Zoom ISO version 3 now, and there's this setting where you can go into the settings. And if you have a participant mapped, you can go into this new setting here where you can click on color and you can adjust each individual person, and you can do multiples of the same person. If you have enough outputs, you can route that through HDMI, NDI, Siphon. There's a bunch of different controls, so that now you can go in here and you can adjust color temperatures, and you can even have different exposures for different outputs of the same guest. So if you want a black and white version, so if we took the saturation all the way down, then we would have Michelle as black and white Michelle, and then we could cut to her once for whatever memory look we wanted, and then we can crop that. Super powerful stuff on a modern Mac, the stuff that Andy's done, because this is all happening in the Mac, and then you could kick it out to a Constellation or whatever you want to do in real time. I mean, it's bananas. I wish that they did more, accepted other input sources besides just Zoom, because this is the craziest Mac. They're taking advantage of the Mac processing, and it's crazy. I mean, it says this feature is experimental, so use at your own risk in production, but it's been pretty solid.
That's so metal. Chris?
Yeah, so as said, the key to this is the color temperature on the set. And I'm just curious, there's 6 of us, I think, here today. 7? 1, 2, 3, 6 of us. My little set here, my desk is running daylight. What do you guys do? Do you guys do daylight or tungsten?
Daylight.
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 I go in between because I have daylight coming through at some points in the show, and I have tungsten lighting my face.
Yeah. Alexander, did you say? What's your color temperature there?
Well, I've got like an allergy to daylight balance lights. I don't like them. I think it looks horrible. That's my personal opinion.
But then you balance the light. You balance it for the camera.
Yeah. So my lights, I've got them set to 4300K, and of course the camera is also matching as well.
Okay.
I'm actually with Alexander on this one because, and Mickey brings up in the chat that he likes 3200K better for skin tone. I also don't enjoy like 5,000 or above inside. It hurts my brain. And so I prefer a warm light. The only time I turn the lights in here cool is when I need a bias light for color grading. But yeah, I'm in between, and I end up at like 4,000 or 4,300, and then I balance the camera and the LUT to compensate for it. I never really thought about it though. I just got the lights where I liked them. I think I started at a standard number, and then I got sick of going back and forth to DaVinci and changing the LUT, and so I started cranking the light until I.
I will say this: that there's something sort of psychological about walking into this space, which is just a corner of a studio apartment, that has this non-typical light that makes sitting here feel a little bit more important. And I don't know what that is, and I'm always looking for ways to make myself feel more important. So it works for me.
There you go. Next question.
This question is coming in from Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. We talked about the Nanlite 6 CP when it was first released. Now that it's been out in the wild, what do you make of the enhancements, especially the Nanlink App 2.0 Bluetooth over previous Nanlites?
Alexander?
I haven't used this light, but in general, I am not a fan of controlling lights on Bluetooth. I suppose it's one way to, it's one thing to use it inside your own personal studio. I wouldn't use it for gigs where someone's paying me. I'd prefer lights that can be controlled over DMX. In fact, I'm slightly hypocritical because I started out with really cheap lights and I'm slowly replacing them all with Amaran DMX capable stuff. But I do have like a hair light above me, which is a nice, very nice soft light, very inexpensive from Godox, but there's no DMX. And so I do turn it on via the Bluetooth setting through their app, and then I'm able to control all the settings. So it can work, but again, your mileage may vary. And personally, if I was lighting something or about to buy some lights, I would go with something that can be controlled over DMX. Even for a home studio, I think it's superior.
For a slightly different angle on this question, I'm going to actually compliment this light for the things that it's good at, and that is being small and being versatile in terms of where you can put it and what you can mount it to. It comes with wrist straps. It's got quarter 20s on either side. When Guy and I were doing the show from Vegas a week or two ago, we had 4 of these that were like on little desktop tripods that we were trying to use as fill light. But when I was trying to control brightness and control color temperature and all that, I'm having to run to each light and hit the little button to do it, and then getting back and saying, how does it look? How does it look? There's something to be said for, like Alexander was saying about his DMX lights, when you have rock solid control of your lights remotely, you can make all these adjustments. It's not going to be what I would use every day for a home studio light. It's not what I would use, except maybe as an emergency fill for something that I was getting paid to produce for someone. However, to be able to throw 3 or 4 of those in a backpack and then take it to a hotel room, this guy's got a shot of us trying to put fill light in this terrible conference. It was a very nice meeting room, but it wasn't made for video.
Just look at that sour expression on your face. Just like it's that shot, like that photo of Tim Cook where he's at the White House and he looks so unhappy to be there. It's like that.
It wasn't the perfect room. It wasn't the perfect setup, but those little lights let us actually put light on our faces that made us look not like Skeletor. So is it perfect? No, but there is this place for that tool, and I would have been tickled to be able to control them remotely. If you have the 6C1 or the 6C2 or whatever the last version was, the new one has better color reproduction. It's got the Bluetooth control. I think it has besides better color reproduction in general, it has a wider gamut in terms of what you can dial it into, in terms of this one will go, I think, as low as 2400 Kelvin and then somewhere higher on the high end. It's like Mickey says in the chat, it's a prosumer light. It's something for a prosumer enthusiast. Like it is a lower end budget light, but if I know I'm going to be traveling and I need to look good in a meeting that's from a hotel room, you're darn right. There's 2 of these in my bag, making sure that I can have a little bit more light and control in the room. Next question.
This one's coming in from Chuck Swan in Bristol, Wisconsin. Working on another micro-budget church flyback for Zoom hybrids, small digital mixer recommendations. Yamaha MGX seems volunteer-friendly. Other options, something with 6 mic instrument ins, a couple of line ins, and a couple of AUXs.
Yeah, and thank you for giving the additional context there, because it is tricky, especially when you're with a volunteer organization like a house of worship or a school or something where not everybody coming in is going to be anywhere close to an audio engineer. You need it to have enough features to get the job done, but be something that you can be approachable and trained to a bunch of different people. Alexander, what do you think?
I have had a lot of success selling this CQ line of digital mixers, which is a newer product from Allen Heath. These are something that if you've ever used the QSC Touch Mix consoles. It's kind of that form factor, very compact with a large touchscreen, except that they sound better than the QSC, and they actually have a really nice touchscreen that is very fluid, very responsive, kind of like an iPad. That was my biggest issue with the TouchMix screen. It's completely unusable in my opinion, but those are all discontinued now, so you're not going to want to go with a TouchMix. So I recommend these. The CQ12 is the smallest one in the lineup. I would warn you, though, if you want to control this remotely and wirelessly, if you don't have the budget to buy your own Wi-Fi router / access point, you're not going to want the CQ12 because it doesn't have that built in. You have to go up to the next model, which is the CQ18T, which has its own dual band modem. Now it can be put into 2.4 or 5 gigahertz mode. 5 gigahertz is going to be a little bit more reliable than 2.4. And in all the tests that I've seen, now I'm not generally a big fan of this kind of thing because historically when other companies in the past that have tried to do this where they put in their own built-in modem like the Behringer X-Airs or the Soundcraft UI series, they were all pretty bad and pretty unreliable. But from what I've seen with the tests on this one, the Wi-Fi modem that they put in this thing is supposed to be pretty good. I still wouldn't do a show if someone paid me to do it that way. And just keep in mind, there is a network jack on this. So if you prefer to go hardwired, you can absolutely plug it into your switch and then have a computer somewhere else like a laptop or, you know what, even an iPad, which can be wired to your network too. So if you've got an iPad and it's not you don't need it to be moved around, you can absolutely get an adapter, a USB-C to Ethernet adapter, and connect it to your network and control it through the Alan Heath MixPad app as well. But it's great. The preamps are very clean, high gain preamps. They have surprisingly, shockingly, pretty good analog to digital converters in there. It'll go all the way up to 96 kilohertz sample rate, which is very unusual for something in this price range. Typically, you know, they will cut corners in that area. So it's good. It's built for beginners. So that's the other thing too. So, you know, in houses of worship, those kind of environments, you've got a lot of volunteers, not necessarily super technical savvy. You don't necessarily have someone that is an experienced audio engineer. And the out-of-box experience is very simplified controls, right down to even the effects engines. Like they'll have like, do you want more treble? Do you want more or less bass or less treble or more treble? Those kind of things. You can put it into an advanced mode if you want, if you know what you're doing. So by default, out of the box, it hides all the parametric EQ processing because most people are not going to understand how to operate that stuff, but you can put it into that mode and unlock all that stuff if you know what you're doing.
Courtney.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion, Alexander. And I think the problem with all digital mixers is they tend to be very deep and they don't necessarily expose their depth on the surface. And that's bad for, volunteers operating it, because if they don't know how to find that buried 6th level down menu on how to adjust something, they're never going to find it. I think you'd be better off finding just an analog mixer with a digital, with a USB interface that sends it out to your stream or whatever you're feeding it into your PA. The Behringer Xenix brand of analogs, they're inexpensive. They have sliders and they expose everything here on the front panel because you don't have to, look through 7 nested menus on a touchscreen to see the EQ. You got low, mid, and high parametric EQ on each channel. It's easily visible at a glance. You can tell what each input is set to, and you've got mic and line inputs. The Xenix preamps are okay. They're not great, but they're fairly quiet compared to the older ones. But for a cheap price and a compact mixer, I don't know. I kind of would tend to lean toward an analog mixer, which is going to be much more obvious to volunteers that are going to be using it. Digital mixer, there's a fairly steep learning curve, and you don't want somebody learning how to use it after the show has already started. So that's my 2 cents.
Alexander?
That's fair. I always get that pushback too when I work with churches when they're looking at upgrading stuff. But I think once people can get past, if you can find somebody that can offer some training and explain things and help them customize it and build some presets. I think that's the way to go, because digital mixers now sound so good, and there's just far too many advantages over an analog console, because you get all the onboard processing, you get the parametric EQ and the dynamics processing on every input, on every output, the ability, especially as more and more churches decide to do things like hybrid stuff, live streams, the ability to have custom mixes on the live stream and really process the audio for the live stream and really treat it as its own unique experience. And analog mixers just have far too many limitations, especially the sub $1,000 ones have far too limitations with the amount of outputs that they have. They have far too many limitations with the busing structure of those consoles. And I find that churches always run into issues, and then they've got to cobble things together, like they have to have an audio interface just to get audio into their computer and all this other stuff. Like I had one church that most churches I find when I recommend the CQ mixer and I actually explain it and show it, usually after a couple weeks, they can get into it pretty quick. I had one church that was adamant that they wanted to stay analog, and I said, okay, well, if you're going to stick with analog, you do really need parametric EQ and other processing, because especially if you're going to use this with speakers in the room, which you're obviously going to have, you're going to want EQ. So I had one place, I had them buy a 31 band stereo EQ, because we need to be able to tune the thing. I mean, you need some basic EQ to tune the room when you have a lot of open mics, especially when you have a choir and you got a ton of mics there, depending on the size of the room and how many people are going to be using it. But it can become very unmanageable very, very quickly if you don't have the right tools to control that stuff properly. Especially one of the things that frustrates me too about these cheaper analog mixers is, fixed high pass filters. They're going to have a fixed filter at 80 or 100 hertz. That's not great. A digital mixer, I can have that a high pass and a low pass filter, and I can set the frequency. I can set how much per octave. Like, are we going to do 12 dB per octave, 18 dB per octave? How steep is the slope? You have way more control, and I think you really need somebody there to help set up the basics in terms of the processing, and then give them a little bit of training.
And Mickey in the chat brings up that one more point on the MGX specifically is that it lacks instrument input, so you'd need DI boxes. So thank you for this little mini audio preview. We've got a lot of great audio experts on our Wednesday show as well. And but luckily we've got Mickey in the chat and some heavy hitters on audio here today. And there we go. Hey, if you're finding office hours valuable, there are a couple ways you can subscribe to the channel. You can also go ahead and look for volunteer opportunities, be on the panel. But if you go to officehours.global/donate, that's a way to just yourself, hey, what value did I get out of office hours this week? Was it $1? Was it $5? Was it $50? Did we save your rear end? Because we helped solve a problem that you needed for a production. Hey, I don't know what it's worth to you, but you do. So officehours.global/donate is a way to give some of that back and support the show. Keep us going. We appreciate it. Next question.
Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana asks, do you see AI bringing new life to old apps? What about vibe coding custom plugins for current apps?
Chris.
So as far as custom plugins, yes, people are going to do that. They're going to, one of the great things about AI coding is that you can develop things that are hyper focused for your specific need. And that's, I've done a ton of that with web apps, and I can see people who work in apps that have plugin architecture doing the same thing. So I think that, yes, absolutely. As far as bringing life to old apps, probably not. I have, in my industry, there is a piece of software that at one point every college athletic department used. They just all used it. It was written in DOS, and it needed Windows 32-bit to run. Windows 11 doesn't support 32-bit. Windows 10, you had to have a special installer to do it. And so for many years, this software was like the writing was on the wall, right? That this is not going to work eventually. But today, there are still people that are you will pry this from my cold, dead hands. But the company who made it is just like, this is not profitable anymore, and just closed the door and said, we're done, right? And if they had said, we're done, we posted everything on GitHub, do what you want with it, then you can take AI, you can point it at that. Maybe someone can draw out of that. Maybe someone can bring it back to life, can do something with it. But companies aren't going to do that. They're going to pull up the ladder behind them and said, we're done. And we may have this may be useful to the community, but it's not valuable to us to give it to you, so we're not going to. So there might be some companies that do, but I think they're going to be few and far between.
Guy?
Yeah, well said, Chris. I think that is exactly the case. And Courtney, being a software developer of some stuff that's kind of old and DOSy looking, could attest to the fact that he probably could just throw it in Claude and give it a modern look. Myself, when I went into DaVinci and made this DaVinci Resolve MCP server, I made it so that you could say, like, replace the B-roll at 1322 with the South Pole takeoff shot, and Claude says, done, replace that clip with this. But these were all commands that were limited by the API. So there were certain things that I would say, like switch to the full documentary timeline, what clips are on V2, replace the clip on. But these are the 53 tools that I had it make were all based on what it allowed me to use the API for. So I could do some light editing, moving around the timeline. The cool thing that I did was I had it do vision, which is AI scene detection and object detection, and it had to use reach out to another API and pull that in using the Moondream API key. In reading this article, though, what's interesting is it talks about previs and being able to use clips that aren't there yet. So if you have a producer sitting behind you and you need some stock footage, this is one of the things that I use Wirecast for, actually, because in here you could go in and you could say add a media file, browse the stock media library, and when you go into this stock media library, you just type in whatever you want. So if you want, let's see, yoga. If I type in yoga, I get all these clips that are royalty free, and I could pop them in my timeline. So I could imagine in the future just being able to do this via voice and just say, hey, go ahead and fill that 10-second gap with a woman meditating by the ocean, and you get that clip. So there's a lot of stuff that can happen out there. It's just a matter of people seeing the possibilities and then dreaming it up and making it happen. So I'm excited about what all can be done.
And what I would say, any company that has a software that now is lovingly referred to as tech debt, you've got old software, you haven't finished developing your new software, but you're trying to figure out how do you keep this alive. But if it's written in a language that's esoteric, it's not popular anymore, it's difficult to keep that production alive. And your population of potential employees to hire to maintain it is getting smaller and smaller. So the long-term health of whatever that thing is from a sustainability point of view, you have to figure out what's next. So I look at this, at the AI coding tools, as a way to almost be a little bit of a bridge and say, okay, help me out in the short term, help me out with a little bit of development, a little bit of maintenance to keep the thing running. But, if you've got an old car that you're just trying to keep running, you're probably saving up because it's not going to last forever. Next question.
This question is coming in from Brody Hefner, New York City. New York, I hung a moving pad from Amazon inside a north-facing window, no direct sun, for sound attenuation. After 2 years, the pad surface directly facing the window is disintegrating, presumably due to UV radiation. Anyone else see this?
Tom?
Well, let's see. I live in Phoenix. Summers go north of 110 degrees. Yeah, I've seen this. And I've got a window right back here that I have actually taken. I went down to Home Depot, bought myself a 4x8 sheet of styrofoam, cut it out just the size of the window, put it in, and that not only gives me heat insulation, but diffused light and sound insulation too. And if you really want to black the thing out, put aluminum foil on the outside.
Courtney?
Yeah, a solution like that will give you sound isolation, but reflectivity, because styrofoam has usually a smooth reflective surface. If you look at the different types of moving pads available, these are the really cheap ones that are just made up of old ground up bell-bottom pants and things that old clothing and junk fabric gets ground up and put in and pressed into a non-woven a blanket. Those are really cheap. These are the better ones that are But there's a problem with these, and if you're hanging them in a window, they will absorb ultraviolet. But also, these are about 80%, 90% cotton. Let me see what it says it is. Yeah, it's cotton and about 10% nylon. So the nylon is probably the stitching or the edging that is around the edge. The problem with cotton is that once it gets damp, and if moisture is coming through those windows, and a lot of windows are kind of leaky and they let more moisture in. Once they're damp and exposed to the sunlight, then they're going to start rotting. And cotton will rot and degrade, if you get water coming through. So make sure your windows have a lot of weatherproofing around them if you want to prevent them from rotting, or find furniture pads that are made out of nylon. Some of the better ones are made out of a ballistic type nylon. That won't rot as easily, although it will degrade with exposure to sunshine.
Yeah, Brody, you've hit on one of my, you might find odd areas of expertise, but UV degradation, anything that's going to get exposed to the sun, you've got two things. You have heat and ultraviolet that are going to start to break down whatever it's touching. And when you have something that is engineered to withstand and keep its color and keep its shape and keep its quality, its material qualities through literal years of exposure to the outdoors, even if it's just through a window, that product is going to be more expensive because there's a lot more technically that has to happen to it in order to make it UV resistant and heat resistant and all that. Moving blankets, most of the time, are not. Even if you get the ones that are not like the kind of felt fibrous ones that Courtney showed, you get the ones that are sewn and they're a little more heavy duty. It's still probably not designed to be outside all the time. So if I were you and you still want to use the moving blankets for killing your reflections in the room, find a different way to get the sunlight off of those. And maybe there's another curtain or some other shutter that you can put behind it. And if you ever need help going to sleep, I could record an hour for you about ultraviolet degradation in materials, because I've been to crazy outdoor weathering sites where there are literally hundreds of thousands of everything that could possibly be outside is on these test sites. They're they try to get them as close to the equator as possible, or Australia is great for them because there's a hole in the ozone hole. They get a lot of UV exposure over there. And swimming pool interiors, car dashboards, I mean, you name it. If it's designed to be outdoor weathering, it is literally sitting outdoor for decades while these scientists are figuring out how things can last. So it's a fascinating science, but that's not what this show is. But this has been a wonderful show to talk about all your questions. Thank you so much to our producers for asking such great questions today. We went down some places I didn't think we were going to, but luckily for you, we have this amazing panel. Thank you to the panel for being here and making sure we can engage the hive mind. Thank you to the chat as well for chiming in on that. And thank you to our back-end crew, not only the ones who are helping us look and sound good today, but also who are working literally 7 days a week, keeping us organized, keeping us moving forward. We can't do any of this without you. We really appreciate it. The Tlaloc Traversal today, had we went around and done episode 2229 in person, would be 20,000 miles. That's 32,000 kilometers, 159 million bananas for scale. See you in after hours. Yeah. I should get up at 4 a.m. more often.
Yeah.
Usually I wait till 4:30.
We lost Fenwick.
Feeling, look at this though. I'm not to get crazy or anything, but
Get crazy.
I'm going to get
Friday.
crazy just for a minute.
Let's go crazy.
Tell me this, does my image turn red when I do this?
Nope.
And you don't see it changing at all?
Nope.
It's changing on my end. Just curious as whether it applies it to Zoom's image or not. I'm adjusting the night.
Look at all these little samples. There's, thousands of them out there.
There's exposure to sunlight. Yeah.
Yep. From interior wood panels. Like I said, I could go on for hours.
Yes, but do they expose the polypropylene moving